So our next guest sending some unsolicited advice to Vice President Pence, pleading for him to help the president get his act together. Jonah Golberg writing, quote, "You're the one person the president cannot fire. Maybe you weren't misled. Maybe you were part of the deception. But I'd like to think that's not the case. Either way, is this really what you had in mind when you took the job?" Jonah Golberg is a senior editor at the National Review and a Fox News contributor. That's a lot. What do you think the vice president can do right now?
Well, look, I mean, one of the things that we actually know that Donald Trump is right about is that he threw away the old playbook, right? He broke the mold. He's not playing by the conventional Washington rules. That, I think, is a big source of a lot of his problems these days, because some of those rules were there for a good reason. But Mike Pence is still playing the role of the dutiful surrogate vice president who just goes around talking about the president's broad-shouldered and manful leadership and all of the rest. And I don't think he's helping Donald Trump by playing that role. Because, first of all, Donald Trump set him up. Mike Pence went out and repeatedly said that the FBI director was fired on the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General, and that this was all above board. And within, 48 hours, Donald Trump made that a complete falsehood. Confirmed it was a falsehood to Lester Holt on NBC. If I were Mike Pence, I would go into the president and say, hey, look, you can't do that to me. If you keep doing this to me, I have, tools at my disposal. I can start speaking more forthrightly. I can threaten to resign. There are all sorts of things that he can do, because what Donald Trump really, really needs is somebody to impose some discipline on his messaging, some discipline on the White House staff. And instead, from all the reports that we get, it's an environment of chaos that the president thrives on, and Mike Pence needs to step up and help get things back on track.
Okay, I take your point, absolutely. How do we know that Mike Pence isn't doing other things, like advancing legislation or being off working on health care or working on tax reform? I mean, maybe he's doing some of the lifting over there. We're kind of assuming that while these other things are going on, nothing else is going on. I mean, there's been some controversy at Fox, but we're still doing our jobs every single day.
No, that's fair. And I'm sure Mike Pence is doing that. The whole pitch inside the Beltway about Mike Pence as the running mate was that he was going to be this liaison between the Hill and the White House, and he was going to help, get legislation through. And I know for a fact that he's trying to do a lot of that stuff. I'm an admirer of Mike Pence's.
Yeah.
But none of that agenda can happen when you have one scandal, one controversy, one firestorm that a week, a day, most of them created by the president himself, because he goes and tweets about being wiretapped, because he contradicts his own White House's messaging about firing the FBI director, because he has no plan for what to do when the FBI director invariably and inevitably pushes back. And Mike Pence is the one guy who doesn't have to fear for his job. A lot of these cabinet secretaries are constantly afraid of being fired, and he doesn't have to be.
Absolutely. Point well taken. In fact, you say, I don't think you should resign in response to the president hanging you out to dry in the Comey affair, but threatening to do so if he plays you for a patsy again might help the president get his act together, which would be good for you, the party, and the country. I always say when things are going, sort of this wrong, at least in the messaging sense, in the very least, we could all agree it seems like it's a little bit out of control. For me, you flip the script. You start doing the opposite of what you were doing before because it wasn't working. What would you want Pence to do in terms of getting the White House in order, in terms of the messaging and everything that's getting out? What would you want him to do? Say, stop tweeting, get out and stop with the daily briefing, or what specifically would you? Because I'm sure Mike Pence is listening to you right now.
I mean, among some of the easy things would be stop having this movable feast of an Oval Office setting where people come and go and wander around constantly. Right now you have the situation where the chief of staff, the White House senior strategic advisor, Steve Bannon, all of them are constantly walking around with the President of the United States as glorified body men, because they're terrified that someone else is going to whisper something in his ear. The staff needs to be streamlined. If you want to have Jared Kushner running everything, fine. Give him the formal authority to run everything. But instead, it's this sort of cacophony of voices and advice, and he seems to listen to the last person he talked to, if he listens to anybody at all.
I'm sure your phone's going to be ringing after this. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate
it. Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. Thank you.